Hey everyone, Sheldon here, and this is a video on a project I've been working on for a little while. As you can see, it's a paper ball. So it's not just going to be a paper ball actually. Originally I was just going to make a paper ball just for fun, but I figured that was just too tedious just to have a ball made out of paper. So I'm actually going to turn this into a prop from a video game called Overwatch. So one of the heroes in the game, his name is Zenyatta, he possesses these orbs called Orbs of Destruction, and he throws them at people basically. So this is not going to be an actual Orb of Destruction, it's just going to be a prop of one using this method of stacking paper to make a sphere. So right now I have half of this actually glued together, and I used some Titebond 3 waterproof wood glue to make it as strong as possible. So this side is glued together. Technically, it's still two separate components actually, but you can see I can actually take this off, and that's how it's made. So it's just a bunch of layers of paper cut out into discs and then glued together to form a rounded shape. And basically I had to figure this all out just by drawing a circle. And the circle is 4 inches in diameter, and basically I just divided it into equal increments of 1/8 of an inch. So the middle one is technically the biggest in diameter, and then as it goes toward the top and toward the bottom it gets smaller in diameter. So basically I just drew little steps that go to the outer circumference of the circle, and they just meet up at some point. And I didn't have to do any math to figure that out. I just sketched it out and just used a square to make it nice and perpendicular. So you can see here, it wouldn't take much filling to actually get that nice and round, but toward the top, where the gap is bigger, it's going to take more filling to get that actually round. And you can see that better when you look at this up close. Basically, each high point of the step here and here, just going all the way down, need to meet up by rounding it off basically. So that's going to be filled up, that'll be filled up just all throughout the whole thing. I do actually need one more disc here toward the top. It's not actually really going to be much of a disc at all. It's going to be a rounded shape that will, round that off, because that's actually the edge of the circle. So with this all put together, you can see it looks pretty good, but if you look at this side, it actually looks taller, like more elliptical shaped. So that's because this half, all the layers are glued together, they're compressed together, there's super glue going all around the outside edge, but on this side they're all still separate discs. So you can see a little bit better how this is all put together. So when I actually do glue them all together and compress the layers together, it'll be a perfect sphere, or at least really close. Obviously the outside is still really rough. It's going to take a lot of sandpaper, a lot of filling, filing, stuff like that. So each disc is actually 4 sheets of paper, at least the bigger ones anyway. Once I got to around this point right here, I was able to fit more than one on a folded up sheet of paper. So you can see if it's cut out, there wasn't enough room to cut out another one here and another one here unless I was cutting out the smaller ones. So it took an 8-layer piece and then gluing 4 of those together to make the thickness I needed for each individual disc. And as you can imagine, that takes a long time. So just to do this, I had to wait for it to dry and then cut the circle out, because if I just folded it over and glued it together and then cut the circle out and then glued the circles together, it would shrink. So the actual diameter of the circle would be smaller. So the whole thing wouldn't be very accurate. So basically, after having all the discs individually cut out, I was really stuck on how I was going to glue them all together and make sure they're all perfectly concentric. So after a while, I just decided I'm just going to drill a hole straight through the middle, and then all of them should line up accordingly. But unfortunately, I couldn't do that all at once. It's just too much. I can't hold this in a vise or anything. I don't have a vise that's big enough for that. There's no way to really hold a ball easily with the tools I have anyway, to drill a hole all at once. And doing it by hand, there's just no way I could have lined up the drill and just done it perfectly the first time. So I had to drill a hole in each individual disc one at a time. And that took a little while, but after doing that, you know, they all line up. I'm just going to take both of these off of here so you can see them. So that's what this piece looks like when it's off of there. And you can see this is a lot more paper than this piece. They're both still very dense and very heavy. And I'm not really sure how much the whole thing is going to weigh when it's done. So at one point, all of these were separated, just like this side over here. And when they were like that, each one of them had a hole drilled exactly in the middle. And all I did was just take a drill, put it through the center like that, and then, I know this is the wrong size of the disc, but I just took another disc and applied glue and just glued it on there like that. And then when it came time to actually compress the layers together, that proved to be kind of difficult, because at first I was just trying to use some pliers and a C-clamp, and I started off by compressing the layers together, and I was just going to go all the way around until it was done. But when I did that, I'd squeeze on this side, and this side would want to split. Same thing, if I squeeze on this side would want to split. So eventually I just realized, oh yeah, I have a vise. I'm just going to use the vise and compress all the layers together. And it turns out that this piece was actually harder to compress the layers together than this one, because each disc is a different size. They still are over here, it's just kind of negligible at this point. But basically I had to take like a C-clamp and try to squeeze them together like that. That didn't work out very well, so I just ended up taking some textbooks, stacking it on there, and then put some weight on top of that, and that seemed to do the trick. And for a piece like this, that's when I used the vise, but it wasn't really necessary on this side. So basically all I have to do to finish at least the basic shape of the sphere is glue together this side so it'll look just like this side, and then glue those two hemispheres together, and then it's just going to be a matter of filling and getting it nice and round. So gluing this side, that'll be easy, but I'm not really looking forward to all the filling and sanding I'm going to have to do afterward, because, you know, super glue and baking soda, that's an option. Other types of filler, you know, wood filler or even JB Weld, something like that, that'll work pretty well. But in my experience with filling stuff, especially rounded surfaces, that can be pretty difficult just because you can't really tell if it's round. You just kind of eyeball it, and square pieces are easier because you can actually check and measure and make sure everything is nice and round. But my calipers don't even fit on here, so I can't really measure it properly. And another option to make sure everything's nice and round would be just to take this dowel out and then put like a machine screw or a bolt in there or something like that, and just tighten it down, and then have some of it just coming out like that, and then just put it in the end of a drill and make sure this side is supported as well, and just spin it around and just go over it with sandpaper. I'm not really sure how well that would work. In theory it works, but you know, that works for this direction, but doing it like this, I can't spin it around this way unless I drilled a hole in the side, and I really don't want to do that. So I'm not really sure how much longer this whole project is going to take. Basically, I know just to get the actual rounded shape of the sphere, that shouldn't be too difficult. But when it comes to the filling and then the engraving to make the design on there, because the weapon in Overwatch actually has engravings on there, has a design that goes around the whole thing. So I'm not really sure how I'm going to do that. That seems like it could be difficult. Maybe I can use a Dremel or a wood chisel or something like that, and just slowly but surely work out the design on there. And if I mess up, I can always fill it up again and then just wait for it to dry, and then just re-chisel and correct for the shape. So that's really it for the paper ball. That's just where I'm at right now. And I have been working on some things on the side, like the paper Rubik's Cube. I kind of put that down for a while because I got stuck and didn't really know how to proceed, but I am still working on it. I'm also working on a couple other things like this is just going to be a small OTF knife made out of paper. So I started working on this just because I found an old blueprint I made a long time ago, and I was just like, oh, I never actually started working on this. So I just decided to start doing it because it's always a good opportunity to work on stacking up walls like that, because you can just take paper and glue it like that, and that works pretty well. But this works really well because you get nice clean corners, and I found a new method that actually works really well for making everything perpendicular and parallel. Here's what it looks like up close. So I didn't actually get that flat yet or anything. That still needs some work, but overall it looks pretty good, and it's small scale in comparison to like the hidden blades I made in the past. So yeah, this will be a nice little mini project, I guess you could say. And I figured I'll just show this right now. I plan on making a video on this pretty soon. So these are some components for the paper Rubik's Cube. You can tell that some of these components are actually older than other ones, just based on the color. So these yellow ones are the oldest, and then this one is relatively new. So shapes like this, they're pretty easy to make just because the shape isn't too complex, but pieces like this, the corner pieces, are really tedious just because it's got this overhang piece right there, and I have to shape that with paper and try my best to just eyeball it. And then I decided I would try another method, which is just stacking it up like that and then drilling a hole straight through the corner and out of this corner. And this was actually the most difficult way I've ever done something, and I really don't want to do it again. So I think I'm just going to stick with the original corner method, just because this was so hard to drill that through there and keep everything lined up with those corners like that. That's how you can tell it's messed up, is if that is going like that way or that way. And this piece right here is the core. So not super difficult to make. Basically it's just a cross of paper cylinders, and then I just filled that all up to get it as strong as possible. So it just looks like this. It's kind of a weird shape, but it's going to be the center of the whole thing, so it has to be pretty accurate. And these pieces here, you can see, are just wrapped around a paper base that I made to get the shape that I need. So these are going to form the middle pieces of the whole Rubik's Cube. So the middle pieces are kind of weird because they're spring loaded. So, and there's no way to really take it apart other than just cutting it and ruining the integrity of the Rubik's Cube. So I don't really want to cut it open because I know there's a spring in there and I'm just going to lose it probably. But you can see I've got a cylinder here, and that's just going to go inside there, just like that. So I don't know if this is accurate to the real thing because I can't tell what it looks like on the inside, but based on what I've drawn out and how much I've studied the Rubik's Cube, I think it'll work pretty well. And then there's just a cap piece like this. So I'm just going to have to figure out how to get a spring in there that will constantly pull the pieces together, which ultimately holds the whole Rubik's Cube together. So that's basically where I'm at with some of the projects I've been working on anyway. I actually have some other ones that I haven't even shown on YouTube yet, so once I get access to those again, I'll be sure to show them to everyone. And of course I have some old projects I'd still like to work on and finish up, and then post some videos on those because some of them have just been unfinished for a long time, so it'd be nice to complete them. Anyway guys, thanks for watching this video, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comment section below or in a personal message, and be sure to subscribe if you'd like to see all the latest updates. And I'll see you guys in the next video.